Welcome to the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast, where our mission is to equip local church worship leaders and worship teams. Our prayer is that this podcast will be an encouragement and help you in your leadership, and you can find out more about us at worshipleadertoolbox.com or check us out on Facebook at Worship Leader Toolbox. Now let's go to today's episode, number 136. Hey everybody, I'm Tim Batts, along with Tim Price. Tim, you always seem like such a positive guy, and almost every episode I'll ask you how things are going, and your answers are usually just pretty happy and chipper. But what if today I asked you just to change it up a little bit? Is there anything that's just not going all that well now for you, or how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, that is an interesting twist. It's good to be here today, and most often for podcasts, even actually my everyday conversation, maybe like everybody else in the world, somebody says, how are things going? And we sort of skim the surface and, have neat and tidy answers. Mm-hmm. And though I won't go too personal, although me, like everybody else, is dealing with personal things, financial things, relational things. And most often I just have to put that in the hands of the Lord and trust. But in terms of worship ministry, the question comes at a good time, because I am dealing with some logistical scheduling team member stuff that in the last couple of days has come up. I've got to make some changes to make some things happen. And scheduling for church is one thing, and then scheduling for special events that are coming up. That's where I've got to kind of do a little bit of scrambling and change some things. And so that's weighed on me because deadlines are approaching and have already even passed in some instances. So how do I handle those? In a nutshell, I really do just try to, spend time praying about it. But sometimes I even lose track of that flow. And so the other day I realized I had kind of been in a spot where I was trying to do it all in my own strength. And I just sort of declared Saturday of last weekend a prayer day for myself. I didn't pick up my laptop. I didn't try to solve problems. I just sort of, every time I thought of it, kept seeking the Lord. And then I also typically try to fast one day a week. And that's always a fruitful day, a clarity kind of day. And so really I just try to say, Lord, it's in your hands. This is your ministry. I'm just a steward. And I don't blame it on God, but I just sort of say, you're going to have to take this. And I guess that's the answer. Part of everyday life of leading worship and being around people. So What about you? Anything along those lines for you?
Well, I guess similar, as I am transitioning into this new role as the director of music and media at my church. It's all new, and so there's lots of unknowns and things going on, and it's a little chaotic, but we just we navigate through it. And like you said, it's just God's ministry, and that's what I try to do, is just give it to Him and let Him handle it. So.
Yep. That's good.
That's all we can do. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about three things that every worship leader does in communication. And those three things are collaboration and planning, check-ins, and pre-service updates. And each of these is geared toward the goal of making every worship service as good as possible.
Yeah, and you really can't communicate enough with everybody this day and age. Not only is there like 10 angles for communicating with people, but people just lose track. Everybody's so focused on their own schedule. And then, of course, the number of details surrounding modern worship is astounding. Leaders have to really strive to, communicate the changes and the plans and the folks who are going to be a part of it. And it's awesome if you can build systems so that things don't fall through the cracks. And we got to most likely develop other leaders with whom you can share the load. And that's part of systems for sure. But we want to give different people around us small groups so they can help work in this idea of visioning and collaboration and planning and all the things we're going to talk about here in just a moment. Systems are a big part of each of those.
Oh, absolutely. Systems are key. And even if you don't think you have a system for something, you can usually kind of step back and see that you do have some sort of system. It may just not be a great system. So part of growing as a church leader is to develop and kind of tweak along the way systems that work for you and your church and your volunteer team.
Yep, and it really does save some stress on your life when you know what you need to do and when you need to do it. And so these three systems that are also on our blog post today, we can talk about a little bit. And maybe for some people listening, it's a reminder, and for others, it might be a need to begin to put together. But the first one on the list is collaboration in planning. And I think that's kind of self-explanatory, but there's a spectrum here of some people who just pick out the songs and do it all on their own and get to worship and just plow through it with the people they have around them. But developing some collaboration and planning is going to include others in the work. And truth be told, you will never be able to include others in planning unless you do have some way of collaborating with them, either a face-to-face time slot or some sort of text or email loop that involves everybody. And if we're going to be somebody who is inviting other people to use their gifts, we're going to have to be planning early enough for those pieces to come together. You can't collaborate very easily when you only have 3 days before Sunday. So if you're going to have special graphics or special music or some sort of video or other creative component, it's going to require having some time with people, pastor, other people on the team, volunteers, whoever it is, and you're going to have to collaborate together in order to involve many gifts in worship.
Oh, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly.
You guys have a planning time? You're just now starting, but
yeah, I have just in the few weeks that I have, I've been a volunteer for a long time, but now that I am officially, on staff, the staff and as well as the volunteers, our church uses something that they call SMART goals. And as we plan things, and it helps because you know how it is, you get bogged down with church and you try to plan things, but then if you don't kind of, check on those periodically, you might have a goal that may be a year out. Well, you've got a year before you can kind of really celebrate that win. And we like to celebrate those wins, sooner. So, SMART is really just an acronym that stands for, specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time. And so if you break those out, you can kind of celebrate wins along the way. And
that's really good.
Yeah, it's really been a great thing for our church staff as well as dealing with our volunteers in the music and media ministry. So. But so what are your thoughts on how like a part-time person might handle a meeting and stuff?
Yeah. So whenever you have a church that a bunch of people are full-time in ministry, they just, get together on Tuesdays at 2:00 and things start rolling. But I have known the challenge of part-time ministry just in my own life all these years. And so there is a little bit of a more of a hurdle to overcome. But one of the things is that you don't have to fall into the exact rhythm everybody else does. You just got to find the thing that works for you and your team and your pastor or whoever is with you. And most often, this sort of changes season to season. Sometimes Wednesday over lunch hour works, and then eventually it kind of doesn't work. So you pick another time, and that's not that big a deal. But one thing I know is it's great for the worship leader, part-time or full-time, to be the one to help nail down the pastor for a time for meeting. If we're counting on the preacher to connect with us, they're busy, and sometimes that doesn't happen. So lovingly sending a note or a nudge to suggest a time is a lifesaver for a pastor. And then, this can be you can have a texting loop for planning, or collaborating and planning can just be a matter of sending a couple songs and saying which one of these you think will work best for the end of the service, or, pulling in other leaders, maybe even pulling in somebody who's on your team who's retired and has time during the day to meet with a group and then be a liaison for you and just sort of say, here's where we're at and here's what we're trying to do. And yeah, any way that you can make it work can be a great system. But I do think if you're part-time, monthly is a good option because you can just meet after work on Monday afternoon, first Monday of the month. You could just know that's your system. Mm-hmm. Or if you have more time and bandwidth, it can be weekly. And whenever you know that something's coming up, you can always change it if something else comes up. But when you know the system's there, that makes it a lot easier for planning with people.
Now, our church doesn't use like a software? I know there's several software specifically geared towards churches, like Planning Center and things like that. Does your church use anything like that?
Yeah, Planning Center is a great tool. It's pretty much the premier tool for worship scheduling.
Right.
And I still I've still part of churches where they don't use that and they just have either the same team for most every Sunday, minus, whoever's on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
or they do have a bit of a rotation and they just put it on an Excel spreadsheet. That's what we used to do before we got Planning Center. But Planning Center does add the possibility for other people to collaborate with you on the order, and they can add in songs or they can make a note about the service. And yeah, that's pretty fascinating. And if you're ever interested, I could easily give you a quick little tutorial on it.
Yeah.
I know that our church started off paying like $15 a month for Planning Center,
Mm-hmm.
way back. And since that time, we've added volunteers for kids ministry, hospitality ministry, all the various aspects of Sunday morning. And now all of a sudden that number has gone skyrocketed, but it's, monthly subscription.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of it is that even a couple $300 a month is less expensive than, hiring somebody to sit there and keep track of all those details for you.
Right.
So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But
I've never used it, but I've heard great things about it. So yeah, we definitely need to collaborate on that sometime soon. So, but moving on to our second point, it is check-ins with team members and other volunteers.
Yeah, this is another part of communication that requires a little bit of a system. And for some people, they're always texting and they're saying, hey, what about this? What about that? It's kind of a rolling conversation. You know who those people are in your life. Maybe you're one of them. But then there can also just be the system of what I've had in the past where often on Tuesdays before the Wednesday rehearsal, I'll send a quick text to the whole group just for that particular band and just say anything I can think of that just pulls them all in and sort of indirectly confirms that they're on and they're ready for Wednesday night and the rehearsal. And so maybe that's just like, we're doing this song, but changing a key, or take a look and double check this song in our order because we're going to try to do it like the recording or whatever else. And other times, I'll send a note to the tech team and just say, hey, remember we got this weird thing happening Sunday. So if you can be there a little early for rehearsal, we can make sure that's set up and all good. And I've done it, almost every Saturday night before time change, spring and fall. I send the whole worship team and tech team a note and say, don't forget the time change. And so if it's the late time change, I don't really care because they'll just be early. But if it's the early time change, I make sure I send them a note because otherwise they'd be late.
Right.
And so, yeah, that check-in part to communication, it adds a human part to life. It lessens the intensity of everything being on email and internet all the time in life. It's actually a person, and regardless of the fact that you're texting, it's still you. And I also know that you can add to your systems texting just about personal side of life. So often if it's somebody's birthday and we actually know it, we'll send everybody on that team a note to say, hey, it's so-and-so's birthday tomorrow night at rehearsal. Who's going to bring the cupcakes? Or you hear something praying for somebody or whatever. So, yeah, you want to make sure that you're doing a little bit of check-in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and one other thought, this is just here as well, but you want to check in with people that you've delegated things to. Not that you're micromanaging, but just to keep them moving. And if there's a special component to service, somebody's doing communion or somebody's helping with some sort of art or photography, you just want to send them a note and say, hope everything's working for that. If you need anything, let me know.
Right.
And all those check-ins help make Sunday a lot better.
Oh, absolutely. Great idea. Well, number 3 in today's podcast is pre-service updates.
Now, this is where you and I probably could talk because everybody deals with this. Like right before church, something always seems to be said, and it just makes me laugh. No matter how hard you try, there's some sort of little thing where the pastor will just come up and say, hey, so-and-so's not here, or hey, we're going to add this at the end before you sing, or make sure you walk up just as I'm saying this last story. Here's my last story. It always seems like right before church, everybody is saying something. And so I'm happy to have the quick curveballs and try to solve them in the last 5 minutes before church. But the pre-service updates are also handy if you plan just a little bit and you are there checking in with the sound people, making sure all the lyrics are right, making sure the computer hasn't crashed, and just saying, hello, good morning. This is going to be great. Glad you're here. How's everything going for you? And if you're planning right and you're checking in right, the first two steps, you're not going to have a whole bunch of major surprises on Sunday. But we're working with people, and there's always some sort of little thing. So we're there to serve. We're going to bend over backwards to accommodate for whatever might have come up over the last couple days. But that pre-service quick check-in is just going to make things better. So you may not call that a system, but I'm sure that people have those right before church kind of check-ins. So do those kind of things stress you out, Tim? Because I know you're a planner. So,
well, yeah, I am a planner, so I try not to let it stress me out too much. And I think it depends on the church. Everybody's going to have last minute changes, and you kind of, I always look at it like if it's the senior pastor that's making them, I'm going to respect him and his calling and decisions on that. So you're going to have to go with it. If it's someone else, you kind of got to decide what you're going to do with it. And I think it also depends. I think kind of a rule of thumb we've always had, really, like no big changes more than 30 minutes before the service starts. But I think that depends on the size of your church. If you're a small church like ours with a couple hundred people, it's, a lot of times you can make those changes. But if you're a big church and your service is, televised or, thousands of people, then, you probably need to really watch those last minute changes.
Yeah, because if you have a last minute change with a lot of production, it's like dominoes falling.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, the person that was supposed to put this graphic up didn't know it because something else came up and this and that.
Right.
And so, yeah, you're right. The size of the church has something to do with it. There's a relational component. And I also think that when you're thinking about other people coming up and throwing things in, that you do want to have a way of sort of saying, yeah, let's put that on hold for now, but let's talk about it this week.
Right.
And then the rule of thumb of a few minutes before, really whatever you have sort of set up is kind of a contract with all the people that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
But you also want to have room for the Holy Spirit. So it's always just a little fine line of like, oof, this is kind of interesting.
Oh, absolutely. But, just like this past Sunday, we were like, so what are we going to do during offering? Are we going to play music? Sometimes the band will just play instrumentally. But the piano player said right before church, literally just, right during like about our 2-minute countdown, she goes, if you want, I can just play something during, offering. And I'm like, that's perfect. Just heard on the baby grand piano playing. And I think it was so different. Like the crowd literally just clapped when she got done. It was almost like this little special, during the service. So that was a last minute change, but it was minor and it didn't really affect anything. So,
well, I think that's awesome. And sometimes those little moments are great. Last night we had a team meeting at our church for leaders from various aspects of the ministry. And they were one of the ladies was going to sing a song before the whole thing started. And I walked in about 2 minutes till starting time, and there wasn't sound for it or anything. It was just, 4 or 5 tables full of people. And I saw the cajon sitting there, and I just walked up to the worship leader and said, do you want me to play along on the cajon? She said, sure, sounds awesome. So I grabbed the cajon, sat down and played along on the song. And those kind of times are always, that wasn't a Sunday morning service. That was way more informal. But those kind of times of somebody come up with an idea, that's really helpful for worship leaders, for somebody else to say, hey, what about this? And I guess to a point, at some point, somebody comes to you with ideas all the time. That gets kind of stressful maybe, but this idea of people offering is excellent.
Right. Absolutely. Well, my motto, plan spontaneity usually works better. So just plan it out. So
that could be a podcast episode. We've talked about that before.
Absolutely.
Plan spontaneity.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we would craft that script or if we would just go with it.
We might have to just spontaneously do that one. So, oh man, well, it's been a great episode. It's great being with you today, Tim. I appreciate you, man. This podcast. Hopefully, it's been a helpful reminder to you to develop some systems for your worship team that are going to help include others in your team and keep people motivated and inspired as you serve together for the long haul, because we are all in this for the long haul. So, But thank you, Tim. Thank you to all of our listeners here on the Worship Leader Toolbox. We appreciate you. We're praying for you, and we would appreciate if you share this with your fellow church members and other folks, and also rate this episode. We'd love to hear a review from you. Also, check us out on Facebook at the Worship Leader Toolbox. We want to hear from you. So we love you. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time. God bless you.